Welcome back, and today on the low points list, we're at Florida. And I've got their old secondary logo on the board. First time I've used that in a video. And so, yeah, Florida Panthers, it's been a rough time, hasn't it, Florida? And it's a rough time for their fans as well. We always have that discussion, right? Oh, Florida, they don't show up. Florida doesn't win anything. They haven't been out of the first round since '96. So when I get to this point of the the playlist, I kind of feel like I'm picking on them. There's a part of me that says, maybe just skip Columbus and Florida altogether. Just leave them out. I don't think their fans are going to necessarily mind, and yet here we are. With Florida, the most losses, 241, Roberto Luongo. And with lost asset, I put Luongo's best years. Luongo had some fantastic years in Florida before he went to Vancouver, and it was criminal. The lack of goal support and the lack of a really good team in front of him. And it shows the overall failings of that franchise. And then it was really brought up again later when Jay Bouwmeester left to go to Calgary, in part because he didn't think that Florida was, in that conversation. And Florida was trying really hard that year to make the playoffs. They fell short. They lost Bouwmeester. Bouwmeester was a good scoring defenseman for them. And so that really, to me, epitomizes it. There are other players I could have probably thrown up there as lost assets, but I went with those two because it really felt like Florida was on the verge of becoming pretty good during the Luongo era, but they just couldn't get enough goals. And during Bouwmeester's era, they just couldn't quite get into the playoffs, couldn't quite convince him that that was where he was going to need to be long term. Now, Bouwmeester didn't go on to Calgary and have like a fantastic run that lasted forever, and there wasn't Stanley Cup rings in his future there. But still, just the symbolism of guys walking away from your franchise going, this has been nice, and I like Florida, and it's nice, and it's sunny and it's warm, but I want to win some games. I have to go somewhere else. So that's a problem, and it's something that I think they're doing their best now to fix. So now their budget has been good. We'll see what they do next year if they do actually cut it, and how that works with the entire league probably doing some budget cuts. But they do seem to be trying to build their way out of this, and they seem to have the right ideas, and then the team goes out on the ice and it just doesn't work. And I'm at a loss as much as anybody else. Now, with this jersey, I didn't pick an ugly Florida jersey because I don't think there's one that exists. Now, what's interesting is I did a power rankings today of jersey histories, and I had Florida at the bottom because they're nice, they're okay, but they're not fantastic, and I don't think they've had a jersey that's really popped for me. It's been, wow, that's fantastic looking jersey. And I did prefer this logo to the one they currently have. So there's that. Now, their shortest term coach was John Torchetti, who was coach in 2004, I should say. Had a record of 10, 12, 4, and 1 as their coach. And so he's on the board, and very often this is going to be guys who were interim coaches. Not in the Hall of Fame, and this is the highest point producer in the team's history that is retired, that is not in the Hall of Fame, Olli Jokinen. And then their wins leader, who's recently retired, Roberto Luongo. And that debate of Luongo and whether or not he's a Hall of Famer is out there. For me, probably yes. But I would totally understand if people said, as a Canuck fan, you may be biased. As a guy who liked him in Florida, you may be biased. And I would say, that's true. We'll see what the Hall of Fame committee decides. So I also put up there their second highest wins total, which belonged to John Van Beesbroek. He is not in the Hall of Fame either. Does Beezer belong in the Hall? Probably not. You could look at Marc-Andre Fleury right now and say, well, that's kind of a Beezer story. The difference is Marc-Andre Fleury's won Stanley Cups, and he's won a lot. So it's a little bit different, but it is similar. But I understand why Beezer's not in the Hall. That run in '96, though, that was fantastic. And the mask was kind of fantastic, too, right? So, yeah, not in the Hall. They haven't really had anybody through there that you can remember primarily as being a Panther that's gone to the Hall of Fame. Pavel Bure, of course, being in the Hall and all that, but he was not primarily a Panther. He's primarily remembered as being a Canuck. So their longest drought is up there with the all-time longest droughts, much like the Oilers, 10 years, 10 seasons. Now, what's interesting is it's 2001 to 2011, which means if we'd had an 04-05 season, it would be 11 seasons. I don't think they would have made the playoffs that year either. So we would have 11 seasons as the record instead of 10. But that lockout wiped out season did them a favor. But it's still a very long drought. And again, when you talk about, well, if fans showed up, it is difficult to bring fans in and make them passionate about a team that just primarily doesn't win. And at points during that history, they're not spending the money either. So they're a low budget team. They're not winning. And there doesn't seem to be a great plan and management to try to fix this out. It's not like they were doing the Moneyball Billy Bean thing. They tried that at one point and then fired Gerard Gallant for not getting on board with it. And that just made things worse. So there have been plenty of periods during Florida's history where it just doesn't work. Now, in year one, that was 93-94. They had a record of 33, 34, and 17 for 83 points. And what's interesting is, out of the gate, Florida looked really good. And then 2 years later, they go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Florida looked like they were going to be the gold standard of expansion teams, and then they did nada after 96. Nothing. 97, they had a good regular season, and then in the playoffs, nothing. So that's been the problem ever since. And I don't know how you get back to that, because 96, it's not like it was a planned thing. It was a very blue-collar team with a pretty darn good goaltender and some solid defensive play. And the team that they have right now isn't built for that, and you're not going to trade off Barkov and Huberdeau to get all the blue-collar guys in there. So I'll be interested to see what happens. Now, 03-04, their 11th season, they have a record of 28, 35, 15, and 4 for 75 points. At year 11, and this is why I have year 1 and year 11 here when I'm talking about lows, because here you can see they are 8 points back of where they were in their expansion year, 11 years in. And that has to be frustrating to fans. It has to be frustrating to players. And again, if you are a UFA and you're looking for a place to sign, money's important, but winning's important too. So you might be able to get some more money playing for Florida, but you might look and say, I'll take a little less money and go to Boston. I'll take a little less money, go to Detroit. I'll take a little less, go to Colorado. I feel like these organizations have a chance to win something. So it's something that Florida's been up against, and at least last year in the summer, they got Bobrovsky, which is a signing that hasn't looked great thus far. Lowest points percentage against any team against the Minnesota Wild. I almost said North Stars. They didn't play the North Stars. They came in after the North Stars left Minnesota. 352 save percent, or 352 winning percentage. There we go. I got it. That's where the one take thing happens. Goals for per game. Their lowest goals for per game is against St. Louis, 2.03. So they don't score well against St. Louis. Their highest goals against per game against Vegas, 4.50. Since that's a small sample size, I've included Colorado, who are next highest at 3.37. So they don't apparently like playing against Central Division teams. There's Colorado and St. Louis there. And they do have a poor record against a number of teams. Again, it feels like I'm picking on Florida in this one. It really does. Now, lowest points per game played, a minimum of 100 games played. Darcy Hordichuk, 0.073. He wasn't there to score points. We know why he was there. Lance Ward, 0.082. Sean Thornton, 0.096. Branislav Metze, 0.098 for him. And then Todd Simpson, 0.103. So you'll see defensive defensemen, you'll see tough players, and sometimes you'll see guys that have a little bit of both on these lists. Lowest save percentage, minimum of 50 games played. This is an interesting list. Lowest is Bobrovsky at 900 and Kidd at 900. So Trevor Kidd and Sergei Bobrovsky, so far it's equivalent in save percentage between the two of them. Ed Belfour, 902, and Mark Fitzpatrick at 903. So Fitzpatrick had a better save percentage this time in Florida than Belfour, but of course, when Belfour went to Florida, he was winding down his career. And he still had a pretty good time in Florida at the beginning of his time in Florida, and then it just sort of went off from there. Again, it's a team that's had an interesting goaltending history with Luongo, Van Beesbrook, Vaucoon, Belfour, and now Bobrovsky. A lot of big names in net, and it's been a matter of trying to get to the playoffs and trying to get somewhere. Goaltender with the best name. There's two of them on this list. Sam Montembeault. Montembeault just sounds cool. I like Montembeault, just rolls off the tongue. I remember when I saw that last name and I was like, and then I heard it and I'm like, oh, okay, Montembeault works. I don't mind that. But also, Richard Schulmistra is a really fun name, and right? So that's kind of what this is about, is just finding the goalie with the best name. And I leave that for the end because, if you're a fan of certain teams, you might be like, man, this video's been depressing. Oh, yeah, that's a fun name. It's all right. So I try to leave it with an uplifting, good moment, and then we can have a debate over the best name and the goaltenders long history. And it has to be goalies, because normally the goalies have, I don't know what it is. Goalies are usually the weird guys talking to themselves in the corner, and goalies are the ones that have the little quirks, and very often they have the most fun names. I don't know what that is, but here we are again with Richard Schulmistra, Sam Montembeault, but Olli Jokinen is a fun name too. So I'm not gonna say Olli Jokinen wasn't a fun name, because it is. So there you go. The low points for the Florida Panthers. It feels like they've been in them since '97. And I'm going to say this again. I say this a lot. I really hope that there's some sort of prolonged success coming for Florida, because they need it if they're going to stay in Florida. They need it if they're going to generate any interest locally, because, come on, the team doesn't win around in 24 years, and we're going to go, oh, look, they don't go to the games. They haven't won around in 24 years. And they barely made the playoffs over that period of time. So, yeah, it's easy to get lost in a sea of Florida sports. And I'd like to see things get better for them, because, again, when you have 31 teams and some parity in the league and real uncertainty as to who's going to be where, I think the league's more fun. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.